Hi, welcome to She Spice. Elijah Wood, the previous kid star, has been making a few serious titles since he's focused on how a portion of his kindred youngster entertainers were abused once upon a time. Elijah Wood has made the hazardous claim that Hollywood is in the grasp of a kid misuse pandemic with rich and strong industry figures, kid entertainers without risk of punishment, and on the off chance that you think something like this is new in Hollywood, reconsider in light of the fact that the late Paul Mooney additionally took a stand in opposition to how his kid star companions experienced in the business Hollywood preferences. You in a certain way, they like you a specific way, they have a net. Oh, doubt Hollywood's intriguing? They like you a specific way when you're dark. You see, Mooney's experiences weren't taken genuinely at the time, but late occasions have shown he could have been correct from the start, as of late Tyler Perry, and Oprah's supposed horrifying acts have additionally become visible, something Mooney anticipated long prior. Better believe it. Oprah and anything that the damnation, the man's name is that man that spruces up dark women. What's his name? No doubt the one that has Alzheimer's. He's from God as a man. He simply remains in the dress. He can't help himself. However, what has it to do with Elijah? You got it right. These two makers are additionally accepted to have demolished youthful entertainers like Elijah Wood. Corey Feldman, McCall Cullen, and Red Johansson is that since you're simply not intrigued, or definitely, I'm somewhat not intrigued, I could do without the quest for it. You know, better believe it like the stuffed cycle trucks precisely. I could do without being on the circuit. As you saw, it's a very close-knit scene. It is trusted that there's this gathering in the business that watches out for youthful craftsmen, and as their obvious objectives, they simply dip in on them. I mean, comprehend that things occur in families, and there's a great deal of things happening in families that we have barely any familiarity with. There's a ton of family insider facts that ought to be left well enough alone. However, how about that as the entire story? You be off base in light of the fact that truly significantly uglier than that in the long run, kids will approach excessively late yet approach and say how they had been moved by somebody improperly. I'm expressing that there are individuals that did this to both me and Corey that are still figuring out they're still there, and they're probably the most extravagant and influential individuals in this business. So clutch your seats firmly, as this will be an insane ride. You know Hollywood is essentially the focal point of diversion. It's where we get our one motion picture programs and where a portion of our most cherished stars sparkle. However, we should not mess with ourselves underneath all that marvelousness and style. There's a genuinely clouded side, quite possibly of the most terrible. Part about Hollywood is the manner in which it explodes its young ability. We've all heard those shocking tales about youthful entertainers being taken advantage of by industry fat cats, and it's not simply bits of hearsay. These things truly happen. Take Oprah Winfrey, for instance. Certain individuals guarantee she's important for this tip-top gathering that permits such awful conduct to proceed with what's truly disappointing. However, the manner in which these accounts are many times dismissed or not offered the consideration they merit from previous youngster star Elijah Woods says Hollywood has a dingy underside of kid and that those dependable are being safeguarded by media outlets. First-class discussions about youngster articles in Hollywood aren't new in his 2013 book movement. Corey Feldman, Nitty Gritty, the supposed he and his The Lost Young Men co-star Corey Haim looked like a kid star. Regardless of this, the conversation hasn't picked up a similar speed as the discussion encompassing Bill Cosby's supposed article, which remained silent until Hannibal Bus put his now on the map joke. Perhaps this is the second for change. Elijah Wood, as of late, plunked down with the Sunday Times and portrayed Hollywood as an industry loaded with snakes, where on the off chance that you can envision it's presumably occurred by Elijah Wood, he was safeguarded from it by his mom who didn't allow him to hit up parties anyway. He referenced that his companions were consistently implored upon by people with great influence. Assuming you're honest, you have almost no information on the world and you need to succeed. Wood expressed that individuals with parasitic interests will see you as their prey. He contrasted what he saw with the exposition violations completed by the English television character Jimmy Savile, which turned into embarrassment following his demise. Addressing the English paper, he would say all of you grew up with Savile. Jesus, it's probably been pulverizing. Clearly, something major was happening in Hollywood. It was all coordinated. Wood said that casualties can't talk as noisily as individuals in power, which frequently implies their accounts aren't followed up on, and the culprits aren't rebuffed. It's a shocking idea, yet ideally, this will give the discussion energy in the future, or perhaps inspire more previous youngster entertainers to share their encounters, yet it seems to be a similar power thing that occurred with him too. Not long after this interview, he put out an announcement explaining his comments. The Sunday Times talked with me about my most recent film. However, the story became about something completely different. It provoked various bogus and deceiving titles. I had recently seen a strong narrative, and I momentarily talked with the correspondent about the subject, which had results I didn't plan or, on the other hand, expect examples learned. Let me get straight to the point. This subject of CA is a significant one that ought to be examined and appropriately explored. However, as I made totally obvious to the essayist, I have no first-hand experience or perception of the subject, so I can't talk with any power past articles I have perused and films. I have seen Wood called attention to the upsetting reality that casualties frequently can't talk as boisterously as the influential individuals hurting them. He depicted as terrible, attempting to open what befalls blameless individuals who are hushed while their lives are hopelessly harmed. Fortunately, Wood credits his mom Deborah for safeguarding him from such circumstances, keeping him from turning into a survivor of the business's more obscure side anyway he recognized that even as a grown-up. He has been presented to dim circumstances understanding that these awful things are reasonable as yet happening. What Wood shared adjusts flawlessly with what Feldman has been talking about for a really long time. It seems as though you're discussing Elijah Wood and his excursion in Hollywood became one of the most unmistakable mainstream society symbols, which could appear to be a gift, but at the same time, it's a significant weight that few figured out how to get away anyway. Wood figured out how to sneak away from the devastating load of Type C projecting in a few shockingly cunning ways. All through his profession, the words "you can constantly do better" have remained with him from youth to now. With the backing of his caring mother, he had the option to endure Hollywood as a youngster, stay grounded, and fabricate a prospering profession that keeps on flourishing both inside and where I'm in my vocation. In the event that it hadn't been for my mother, she kept you grounded better, Belle. Evit. She was fixated on keeping me grounded. She bored lowliness anyway. In his thriving vocation, he has seen numerous things that ought not be performed, and something such as see it was during his FOCS on work that Elijah met his first love and the mother of his child since early on. Elijah Wood realized he needed to engage as the second of 3 kids brought into the world to Debbie and Warren Wood. He experienced childhood in a caring family that upheld his advantage in music and acting at online. 7 years of age, Wood began demonstrating and taking piano illustrations. He started landing jobs in school creations like The Sound of Music and The Superb Wizard of Oz. His proficient vocation began early, showing up in Paula Abdul's Eternity, Your Young Lady music video in 1988. From the get-go in his acting profession, Wood showed up in eminent works like Back to the Future Part 2, Heaven and the Great Child. His part in Youngster in the Night grabbed the eye of chiefs, laying out him as a promising entertainer from Iowa. Anyway, at 15 he needed to have some time off. Due to private matters, his folks were going through a separation. While troublesome, it didn't influence him as seriously as it could have. Different youngsters in comparative circumstances, subsequent to getting some much-needed rest to center around himself and his family, Elijah would get back to Hollywood with his job in Flipper, A Family Expect. Arian's film about a high school kid really focusing on an injured dolphin, his break provoked by his guardian separate, was a difficult period for Elijah. However, he oversaw it better than numerous teens confronting comparative conditions. Work with the dolphins was somewhat something that I've generally needed to do, and I truly believe I should do this because the buzz around Flipper moved the entertainer from a lovable juvenile to a teen symbol. Elijah Wood turned into a most loved subject from magazines like High Schooler, Thump Beep, and Tiger Thump. He was such a heartbreaker for youngsters that fans would set up camp at his family's home, at times thumping on the way to make intense demands. Yet during his rush hour, he saw that his companions like Corey Feldman, Kulin, and Scarlett Johansson have not been working like him, and the explanation was stunning. Many hopeful entertainers see Hollywood as a definitive dream, yet late disclosures have revealed the business hazier side. A few famous people have fearlessly shared their upsetting encounters, revealing insight into brutal, real factors that have started far and wide conversations and, on occasion, reactions from the public. He was not my representative. He was, in a real sense, very much like a stalker holder on man that essentially got into my life since he worked for the Saturn Grants and was attempting to give me an honor. So he hit me up. Corey Feldman began his acting vocation early on at 3, quite early on. Subscribe She Spice for more videos.